The girl couldn't have been more than 6. She was sitting on the tailgate of a moving truck, swinging her sneakers, watching me carry a bookshelf up the driveway next door, and she pointed at my arm like she'd caught me stealing something. "Mom," she said, "he has yours." I didn't know what she meant. I was mid-step, one corner of a walnut bookshelf digging into my forearm, sweat down my back, and this small stranger was pointing at the tattoo on my inner arm like it was evidence. "He has your what, baby?" said a voice from inside the truck. And then a woman leaned out into the light. "Let me back up. My name is Wes Hartley. I'm 38. I make furniture for a living, custom stuff, tables and chairs, and the occasional wedding chest that costs more than a used car. I work alone in a shop behind my house, no apprentice most days, no partner, no crew. Just me and a radio that only gets one station. I like it that way. Or I've spent 19 years telling myself I do, which is close enough that I stopped checking." I'd been carrying boxes for a neighbor I hadn't met yet. That's the kind of thing you do in a town this size. Somebody sees a moving truck, and by noon there's a casserole and 3 men in work boots you didn't ask for. I was the work boots. I hadn't seen the casseroles yet. The little girl was hers, that much was obvious. But I didn't know the rest until the woman stepped down off the ramp and stood in the driveway. And the whole world got very quiet the way it does right before you drop something heavy. She stopped. Just stopped. One hand on the truck rail, one foot still on the ramp, and she looked at my arm the way her daughter had. Except the kid was curious. The mother looked like she'd walked into a wall she couldn't see. I knew her. I knew her before my brain caught up to the fact that I knew her. That's a strange thing to feel in your body. The recognition landed somewhere below the ribs, in that place where old songs live, and by the time it reached my face I was already setting the bookshelf down on the grass so I wouldn't drop it on my own foot. "Nora," I said. 19 years. That's how long it takes to say a name and have it come out cracked. She didn't say mine. She didn't have to. Her mouth opened and closed and she pressed her lips together, and then she looked down at her daughter, who was still swinging her feet on the tailgate, completely unaware that she'd just detonated something. "Piper," Nora said. Her voice was careful. "Go find the box with your books, the one with the star on it." Piper hopped down and ran into the house like it was already hers. And then it was the two of us in the driveway, with a bookshelf between us and 19 years I had no idea how to hold. Let me tell you about my hands, because they explain the rest of me. I trust them completely. I can look at a slab of raw oak and see the table inside it, and my hands will get it out. I've built 400 pieces of furniture, and I've finished every single one. That's the part nobody says out loud about a guy. I finish things. I sand the corner that nobody will ever touch. I oil the underside of a drawer no one will ever see. I don't leave a joint half-cut and tell myself I'll get to it. I do not walk away from a job, ever. I just never learned how to do that with a person. The shop out back is full. Commissions stacked 3 deep. A mantle for the coolies, a dining set going to somebody's daughter in the city, full of things I made for other people to sit at and eat at and grow old around. And the house is empty. Has been for years. 1 plate in the drying rack most nights, a bed I make out of habit on the side I don't sleep on. I'd made peace with that. Or I'd built a very nice cabinet and put the knot piece inside it and closed the door. Both are the same skill, really. You'd be amazed how much of a quiet life is just knowing where to store the thing you can't look at. Nora looked older. Of course she did. So did I. But it was the good kind of older, the kind where a face finally settles into the shape it was always going toward. There were lines by her eyes that weren't there when she was 19. I found I wanted to know every single one of them, and I hated that. Because wanting things is how you end up standing in a driveway with your chest full of gravel. "You live here," she said. It landed like an accusation almost. 6 years. I nodded at my place, the one with the shop light still on in back. Bought it after my dad sold the old house. Something moved across her face when I said that. Quick, like a cloud over a field. I didn't understand it yet. I filed it away, the way I file the grain of a board I'll need later. "I didn't know," she said. "The listing didn't say who was next door. I didn't." She stopped. "Started again. I would have known your truck." "It's new." "Everything's new," she said, and then laughed, one short, unhappy breath. She looked at the house she'd just bought. The one 20 feet from mine. "God, everything is very new." Piper came back out holding a shoebox with a gold star drawn on the lid in marker. She stood between us, small and bright and utterly unbothered, and she looked up at me and then at her mother's arm. "See," she said, satisfied, "you have the same drawing." Because we did. On the inside of my left forearm there's a compass. Not a fancy one, 4 points, a circle, a little star at true north, drawn by the shakiest tattoo artist in a town 2 hours from here on a night when we were 19 and certain and stupid and completely unbearably happy. It cost $40 for the pair. We split it, 20 each. We thought that was funny. We thought a lot of things were funny that summer. Nora's is on her wrist, same compass, same crooked star at north. I hadn't seen it in 19 years, and there it was, on the wrist of a woman standing in a driveway holding nothing, because her hands were empty and her daughter was holding the box. "We got them a long time ago," Nora told her daughter. Her voice had gone flat and smooth, the voice you use to close a subject, before you were even a little idea. "Why?" "Because we were young." She put her hand on Piper's shoulder and steered her gently toward the door. "Go put your Starbucks in your new room. Pick which wall your bed goes on. I trust you." Piper went. Kids are like that. They ask the biggest question in the world and then wander off to negotiate wall space. I picked the bookshelf back up because I needed my hands to be doing something. "Where do you want this?" I said. She blinked at me, like she'd forgotten there was a bookshelf, like she'd forgotten there was a reason a strange man was in her driveway at all. And now the reason was standing there being a person she used to know the shape of in the dark. "You don't have to," she said it fast. "You really don't. I can call the guys back, or I'll do it myself. I've moved 4 times in 6 years. I'm very good at this." 4 times in 6 years. I heard the number and didn't ask. "It's a bookshelf, Nora. I've got it." I shifted the weight. "Living room?" She held the door. I carried it in. And that was the first thing I did for her in 19 years. And it was the smallest thing in the world. A piece of furniture through a doorway, and my heart was going like I'd run up a mountain. The house smelled like other people's soap and cardboard. Sun came through the front windows in long, dusty bars. I set the shelf where she pointed, against the wall by the fireplace, and I stepped back and looked at it, and I couldn't help myself. "It's out of level," I said. "The floor, not the shelf." "Of course you noticed that." I noticed floors. I crouched, ran my thumb along the base. "I've got shims in the truck. Take me 2 minutes." "Wes." She said my name and it stopped me cold. She was standing in the middle of her half-unpacked living room with her arms crossed over her chest, holding her own elbows, and she looked at me with something I couldn't name and didn't have the right to. "You don't have to fix everything the second you walk in," she said quietly. "You never used to." That landed harder than she meant it to. Or exactly as hard, I couldn't tell yet. "People change," I said. "Yeah," she looked away. "I've heard that." For a second, neither of us said anything. Piper's footsteps thumped upstairs, dragging something across a floor. The truck ticked in the driveway, cooling. And I did the thing you're not supposed to do. I reached for the past like it was a board on my bench, like I could just pick it up. "You never wrote," I said. I meant it soft. It didn't come out soft. It came out like something I'd been carrying for 19 years, because it was. And she flinched. Not a big flinch. A small one, the kind that lives in the shoulders. But I build things for a living. I see the joint before it fails. I saw hers. "Don't," she said it to the window, not to me. "Nora, there was a whole summer and then there was nothing. You just..." "There was a letter." She said it, and then she looked like she wished she hadn't. Her jaw tightened. Her wrist, the one with the compass, turned inward, tucked against her side, like she was hiding it. Like she couldn't stand to have both compasses in the same room pointing at the same thing. "What letter?" I said. "It doesn't matter." She uncrossed her arms and crossed them the other way, which is a thing people do when the first arrangement stopped protecting them. "It was a long time ago. We were kids. Everybody's got a summer they got a tattoo they can't explain to a 6-year-old. You brought it up. You brought it up." She almost smiled when she said it. Almost. There was the girl I knew, under the tired and the divorce papers, and the 4 moves in 6 years. There she was, and it hurt to see her because it meant she'd been there the whole time, just not here. You always did this. You'd get a thread, and you'd pull it until the whole thing came apart, and then you'd act surprised there was a hole. That's woodworking. That's not woodworking, Wes. That's you. And then she laughed, and it was real this time, and it broke the thing in the air between us, and for 1 second we were 2 people laughing in a sunny room, instead of 2 wounds that had recognized each other in a driveway. Then Piper yelled down the stairs asking where the tape was, and Nora turned toward the sound, and the second was over. I didn't leave right away. I should have. Instead, I got the shims from the truck and I leveled the bookshelf, because she said I didn't have to, and doing it anyway was the only sentence I knew how to say. 2 minutes. I slid the wood under, checked it with the little level I keep in my pocket like other men keep gum, and the bubble drifted to the center and sat there, perfect. She watched me the whole time from the kitchen doorway, not talking, just watching my hands. "There," I said, "it'll hold." She nodded. She didn't say thank you. I didn't want her to. Let me tell you what I understood. Standing in her living room with the level still warm in my hand. The house next to mine had been empty for 2 years. A little box of a place with a good porch and a bad kitchen and a for sale sign that faded in the yard through 2 summers. I used to look at it from my shop window and feel nothing, which is the whole point of an empty house next door. It asks nothing of you. It just sits there being somebody else's problem someday. And now it wasn't empty. Now it had her in it, and a 6-year-old with a star on a shoebox, and a compass on a wrist that matched the one on my arm, and a letter she wouldn't talk about that made her turn her hand away from me like the ink might burn. I couldn't unsee her. That was the trouble with all of it. You can unmeet a stranger. You can nod at the guy who buys the house and never learn his name. But you cannot unsee the person you got matched tattoos with at 19, standing in a kitchen feet from your own, telling you there was a letter and then telling you it didn't matter in the same breath. She was lying about the letter. I knew that the way I know a board is going to warp. Not proof, just the grain. I picked up my level and my leftover shims and I went to the door. "Wes." I turned. She was standing there with the light behind her, one hand on the wrist with the compass. And she looked like she was deciding something. Like she was standing at a fork in a road she'd already walked once, a long time ago, and had spent 19 years pretending she couldn't remember which way she'd gone. "Welcome to the neighborhood, I guess," she said. Wry, guarded, trying to make it a joke and not quite getting there. "Yeah," I said. "You too." I walked back across the strip of grass to my own house, to my full shop and my empty kitchen, and I stood at the window with the one radio station playing low, and I watched the lights come on in a house that had been dark for 2 years. And I thought about the letter she wouldn't explain. The one she flinched at. The one that made a grown woman turn her own wrist away from a man who used to know it by heart. I thought about it all night. And I had a bad feeling I was going to be thinking about it for a while. The thinking lasted 3 days. Then the fence broke, and I stopped having a choice about it. It was the section between our yards. Old cedar rotted at the post, leaning like it was tired of standing. It gave up during a windy night and folded into her side of the grass. I heard it go around 6 in the morning, a soft wooden sigh, then a thud. I was outside with coffee before I decided to be. Nora was already there, robed bare feet in the wet grass, staring down at the mess like it owed her money. "Your fence attacked me," she said. "It's technically the property line's fence. So it's a mutual assault." I crouched and looked at the post, punky all the way through. It had been dying for years and nobody noticed. "I can fix it," I said. "It's a 2-hour job, maybe 3. She looked at me over the fallen boards. "You don't have to." "I know. I can call someone." "You could." I stood up. "Or I could not charge you and it'd be done by lunch." She thought about that longer than the offer deserved. I understood why. Letting me fix her fence meant standing near me for 3 hours. It meant a reason. She was doing the same math I'd done at 2 in the morning and coming up just as uneasy. "Fine," she said finally, "but I'm making coffee that isn't whatever that is in your cup. This is fine coffee. It's the color of a dying fern." So that was how it started. Not with a decision, with a rotted post and a woman who insulted my coffee before 8 in the morning. I got the drill from the shop. Nora came out with 2 mugs and handed me one, and it was, annoyingly, much better coffee. "Where'd you learn to make this?" I said. "My ex liked expensive things." She said it flat, no wound in it. "I kept the machine, he kept the boat." "Sounds like you won." "I got Piper." She looked toward the house. "He got weekends, so yeah, I won." I drilled the new post while she held the level. She was bad at holding the level, kept drifting it to look at whatever I was doing with my hands, then catching herself and fixing it. I didn't say anything. I liked that she was watching. I hated that I liked it. Piper came out around the 2nd hour. She sat on the back step with a juice box and narrated. "You're doing it wrong," she informed me. "Am I?" "My mom does it faster." "Your mom has never done this in her life." Nora didn't defend herself. She just sipped her coffee and let her 6-year-old lie to my face. There was a look she gave me over the mug, half apology, half dare. She was letting me see the kid be a kid, and watching to see what I did with it. I finished the post, kept my mouth shut, passed a test I didn't know I was taking. That was the thing about Piper. She'd decided I was interesting, and once a kid decides that, you're finished. She started coming over, not to the house, to the shop. The workshop had a smell she liked, she said, sawdust and something warm. She'd sit on the tall stool by the window, with her feet swinging, and ask me what everything was. The clamps, the planer, the little tin of screws sorted by size that I'd never once let anyone touch. "Can I sort these?" she asked, third visit in. "No." "Why?" "Because it took me 6 years to sort them the first time." She looked at the tin, then at me, like she was filing that away. Then she sorted a completely different jar of scrap hardware into piles by color, which was useless, and I let her, and when she was done she looked so proud, I found a place on the shelf for the little color piles and left them there. Nora would come get her. Every time she stood in the doorway of the shop before she called Piper's name, just for a second, looking at the space like it explained something about me. Maybe it did. One afternoon she came in and stopped at the work table where I had a small side table clamped up. Cherry wood, wobbly leg, somebody's cheap catalog furniture that wasn't worth the repair. "That's mine," she said. I looked at it. "This is yours?" Piper brought it over. She said the wobble was bothering you. It had been bothering me. The kid noticed. "It's a bad table," I said. It was a wedding registry table. Nora crossed her arms. "He picked it. I hated it. Then the marriage ended and I kept the table I hated, which tells you something about me." I ran my thumb along the joint. Somebody had glued it wrong. The whole thing was fighting itself. "The leg's not the problem," I said. "Whoever built it rushed the joinery. It was always going to wobble. It just took a few years to admit it." She was quiet for a second. "You could probably say that about a lot of things," she said. "You could." I recut the joint and clamped it fresh. She stayed the whole time. Didn't hold the level this time, just leaned on the far bench and watched me work, and at some point I started humming without noticing. Nora went still. "You still do that," she said. "Do what?" "That." She wasn't smiling exactly. Something softer than a smile. "That thing, over the wood, you used to do it in shop class. You'd get quiet, and then you'd start humming this nothing little tune, and you never knew you were doing it." I stopped humming, felt caught, 19 years old and caught. "I didn't know I still did that," I said. "You do." She looked back down at the table. "It's the only part of you I recognized right away." Neither of us said anything after that for a while. The clamps ticked as the glue set. Somewhere the kid was rearranging my color piles. Here's what I couldn't figure out. We knew each other. We'd traced each other's whole 19-year-old lives. The compass tattoos, the parking lot behind the diner, the summer we thought we invented feeling things. But we didn't know these two people. The one standing in the shop with Gray coming in at the temples and a kid between us. We'd keep talking like the old versions, then hit the new ones, and misjudge every time. I thought she was still guarded because she didn't trust me. She thought I was distant because I didn't care. We were both just being careful, and careful looks exactly like disinterest from the outside. That's the trick of it. Nobody can tell the difference. Around then, I got another version of the same lesson from Deacon. Deacon's my apprentice, 19, which I try not to read too much into. Good hands, no patience. He'd started a walnut blanket chest 6 weeks earlier, got it to the point where the dovetails actually mattered. And that morning I came in and found the chest shoved in the corner, and Deacon sanding a cutting board. "Where's the chest?" I said. "I'm over it." He didn't look up. The dovetails kept blowing out. "I hate it now." "That's the third thing you've quit this year." So nothing. I got my coffee. "It's your walnut." I let it go. He was a kid. Kids quit things. I even told him the walnut would keep, that he could come back to it whenever he wanted. He shrugged like a person who already knew he wouldn't. I looked at the chest in the corner, half a beautiful thing abandoned the second it got hard, and I felt nothing about it except mild annoyance at the wasted wood. I didn't see myself in it, not even a little. That's the part I think about now. A man is always the last one to spot his own habit when it's wearing somebody else's face. The misread came the next week. Nora and I had gotten into a rhythm. Coffee on the fence line most mornings. Easy. She was funny in a dry way that snuck up on you. She could take a shot and land one back before you'd finished laughing. I'd started looking forward to it more than I wanted to admit to offense. Then one morning she was on her phone, half distracted, and she said, "Sorry, I've got someone from work who keeps texting about the weekend." Someone from work. I don't know why it landed the way it did. I'm a grown man, but I heard someone from work and my whole chest just closed up like a shop at closing time. Lights off, door locked. "Sure," I said. "No problem." I took my dying fern coffee and went inside. I got cold about it. Not mean. Cold. I stopped coming out for the fence-line coffee. When Piper came to shop, I still let her sort the useless hardware, but I stopped hanging around the doorway waiting for Nora to come get her. I told myself I was giving her space. What I was actually doing was protecting myself from a thing that hadn't happened. She had someone, of course she did. She was 37 and easy to be around, and I'd waited 19 years to feel my chest close up over a woman on a phone. It went on like that for almost 2 weeks. Careful, polite. Both of us pretending the temperature hadn't dropped. She noticed. She had to have. But she was cautious for Piper's sake, guarding the kid against another man who might turn out to be weather instead of a house. And my sudden cold gave her every reason to pull back too. So we both pulled back, both reading the other one as done, both wrong. It broke on a Thursday night. I was on my porch. Late. The kind of late where the neighborhood's asleep and the porch light draws moths, and you think you're the only one awake in the world. Nora's light was still on next door. Then her door opened and she came out and sat on her own steps 30 feet away in the dark. For a while neither of us said anything. 2 porches, 1 quiet street. "You went cold on me," she said finally. Not accusing, just true. I could have lied. I was tired of lying, and it was late, and late is when the truth gets loose. "You said someone from work," I said. A pause. "Marcus," she said. "He's 61, he drives the carpool. We split gas," I heard her exhale. "Wes, he's my carpool." I sat with that. Felt like an idiot in a very specific and familiar way. "Oh," I said. "Yeah, oh." She pulled her sweater tighter. "You thought I was seeing someone." "I thought a lot of things." "You always did." There was no bite in it. Something older. That was the whole problem the first time, wasn't it? You'd decide what I meant and then just live in the version you made up. That stopped me. "What do you mean the first time?" I said. And that's when it came. The thing she'd been walking around since the moving truck. She looked out at the street, not at me, because some things you can only say to the dark. "I never stopped writing to you," she said. The street got very quiet. "When my family moved," she said, "you knew we were leaving, but you didn't know it was going to be that fast. Neither did I. My dad got the job in April and we were gone by June. I didn't even get to say it right. I told you I'd write. And I did. I wrote you 1 letter, a long one. I put everything in it. Where we landed, my new address, the phone at the new place, all of it. I told you to write back and I'd get on a bus the second I turned 18. "I never got a letter," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. "I know." She finally looked over. "Your dad sold the house that summer. You'd already moved by the time it got there. It went to the old address. I waited 3 months for you to write back, and you never did, because you never got it, and I decided you'd changed your mind." Her voice caught, just barely. "I thought you forgot me the second I was gone. For 19 years, Wes, I thought you were the boy who forgot me." I couldn't breathe right. "I thought you left," I said. "I thought you got there and it got real, and you decided I was a small-town thing you outgrew. I waited by that mailbox at my new place like a moron, every day. Nothing came, so I stopped checking. I put my hand over my mouth for a second. I've spent half my life thinking I was easy to leave. And I spent half of mine thinking I was easy to forget. 2 porches. 19 years, all built on 1 letter that landed in the wrong hands, and a boy who'd already moved. "It went to the strangers who bought the house," I said slowly. Like if I said it right, it would stop being true. "That's it. That's the whole thing. A letter went to the wrong address." "That's the whole thing." I laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. It was the sound a person makes when 19 years rearranges itself in 30 seconds and there's nowhere to put all of it. "You had my whole life reframed," I said. "I built a person out of that. The guy who works alone and likes it. The guy who finishes tables and never finishes anything with a face. And it was a wrong address." Nora wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. Quick, like she didn't want me to count it. "I have to go in," she said. "Piper's got school." "Nora." She stood up, stopped on the top step, her hand on the door. "I don't know what to do with this," she said quietly. "I really don't. I spent so long being angry at a version of you that never existed. I don't know who to be now that he's gone." Then she went inside, her porch light went out, and I sat alone on mine with a truth I couldn't unlearn and no idea what came next. Because knowing why you lost someone doesn't tell you how to find them again. That letter had been sitting in the dark for 19 years, and now it was out, and neither of us had the first clue what a person is supposed to build on top of it. Turns out the answer to what you build on top of it is small. Embarrassingly small. You build a Tuesday. Nora invited me to dinner 3 days after the porch. She was careful to say it wasn't a date. Careful the way you set down a full glass. It's spaghetti, she said. It's the only thing Piper eats without a negotiation. Don't get ideas. About the spaghetti. About any of it. So I came over at 6 with a bottle of the good olive oil from the cabinet I never use, because I didn't know what you bring to a thing that isn't a thing. Piper answered the door before her mother could. You're late, she said. I'm early. We started without you. She turned and yelled into the house. Mom, he brought oil. Nora appeared in the kitchen doorway with a wooden spoon and a look I couldn't place yet. Flour on her sleeve. Steam behind her. She glanced at the bottle in my hand, and something in her face went soft for half a second before she caught it. Olive oil, she said. You brought olive oil to a spaghetti dinner. It felt safe. It's the most you thing I've ever seen. I didn't know what that meant, but she said it like it wasn't an insult, so I decided to keep the win. Dinner was loud in the way houses with a 6-year-old are loud. Piper narrated. She narrated the sauce, the amount of cheese I was allowed, a long story about a boy at school named Colton who ate a crayon and lived. Nora and I talked around and over the kid the way you do, and somewhere in there I stopped waiting for it to feel awkward, because it stopped being awkward. That scared me more than anything on the porch had. After dinner, Piper dragged out a shoebox of what she called her projects. Half a friendship bracelet, a rock she'd painted to look like a worse rock, and a birdhouse kit still in the shrink wrap that somebody had given her and nobody had opened. Can you make it? She asked me. Can I make it? Cheap pine, precate, the kind of thing designed so a kid can't fail. No, but you can, I'll show you. Nora went still at the sink. I felt it more than saw it. We laid it out on the kitchen table, all the little pieces, and I handed Piper a folded square of sandpaper and showed her how you go with the grain and not against it. How you feel for the rough part with your fingertips first, with your eyes closed, because your hands know before your eyes do. She closed her eyes, dragged her small fingers along the wood. It's bumpy here. So sand there. How long? Until it isn't bumpy. She sanded that one edge for 11 minutes. I timed it without meaning to. Total focus, tongue between her teeth, and when she opened her eyes and ran her thumb down the smooth edge, she looked up at me like I'd handed her a secret. It's soft now, she whispered. You did that. I did that. She looked at her mother. Mom, I did that. I glanced up, and Nora was standing by the sink with a dish towel pressed to her mouth, watching her daughter sand a birdhouse, and her eyes were wet and she was furious about it. I could see the fury. It was aimed at herself, for how easy this looked, for how much she wanted it. She turned back to the dishes fast, before Piper could see, and ran the water louder than the dishes needed. I understood it, because I was doing the same math on the other side of the table, feeling how easy it was, getting scared of exactly that. We put the birdhouse in the shop to dry the glue. Piper made me promise it would still be there in the morning, and I promised, and she believed me the way kids believe you before life teaches them not to. That was the pattern for a while. Dinners, then the shop, then the kid underfoot in both. Piper got attached fast. Too fast, if I'm honest. She started calling the tall stool by the window my stool. She left a juice box in the shop fridge like she was moving in. One afternoon I heard her on the porch telling Colton Huacre over the fence that she had a guy who builds stuff, and the pride in it put a hole in my chest I wasn't ready for. A kid doesn't guard her heart. That's the whole thing about a kid. She just hands it over and assumes you'll be careful with it. Nora watched all of it with two faces at once. One that was glad. One that was already calculating the cost if I turned out to be weather instead of a house. She'd told me once about her ex that the divorce barely touched her own heart. What wrecked her was Piper asking for months why Daddy stopped coming on Saturdays, and Nora not having an answer a 6-year-old could hold. She wasn't going to do that to the kid twice, I got that. I got it in my bones. Then the ex called. I only knew because Nora was short on the fence line one morning, flat, her jaw set wrong. I asked if she was okay and she said the word fine, in the way that means the opposite, and then because it was early and the coffee was working, she told me. Aaron wants to change the custody days, she said. He's got a new job, new schedule, wants Piper every other week instead of weekends. Which sounds fine, which sounds like a dad stepping up. She stared into her mug. Except he said this before, twice, and both times he backed out after I'd already told her, and I had to be the one to unpromise her a father. So what do? I don't tell her anything until it's real. I let the lawyers move the paper, and I keep my own life quiet enough that if his falls through again, hers doesn't shake. She looked at me then, and I understood the look. There was nothing cold in it. It was a woman doing triage. That includes this. Whatever this is. I can't have Piper counting on a second man who might not stay. She's already counting on you. I can see her doing it. And I need you to understand that if this goes wrong, she's the one who pays it, not me. I understand. I don't think you do yet. She said it gently, but you will. I did. Around the same time, the thing with Deacon came to a head. I walked into the shop on a Monday, and the walnut chest was gone from the corner. Not moved. Gone. Deacon had hauled it out to his truck. He was standing by the workbench with his hands in his hoodie pocket, doing the thing 19-year-olds do when they've rehearsed a speech and hate it already. I'm quitting, he said. The apprenticeship. All of it. I set my coffee down. Okay. That's it? Okay? Tell me why first. Then I'll decide if it's okay. He blew out a breath. It's too hard, man. The dovetails, the hand-cut joints, the 6 months on one dumb chest. My buddy's doing epoxy tables. Pours resin, sells them on the internet, makes bank in a weekend, no dovetails, no getting yelled at because my gaps are a 16th off. He looked at the empty corner. I'd rather just start fresh somewhere, it's easy. And there it was. I don't know how to describe the thing that happened in my chest right then, except that it was the woodshop version of hearing your own voice on a recording. That flinch. That's not what I sound like. Except it is. It's exactly what you sound like. Deacon, I leaned on the bench. How many times you started something in here and quit it the second the hard part showed up? I don't know. A few. 5. Since January. The blanket chest, the rocker, the 2 cutting boards, which don't count, and a dovetail box you got 80% done and then abandoned because the last 2 joints scared you. I let that sit. You keep starting over because starting over feels like progress. New wood, clean slate, nothing you've screwed up yet, and it feels great for about a week, and then it gets hard, and you go find the next clean slate. So you never finish anything, and a man who never finishes anything ends up 40, with a garage full of 80%. I picked up a chisel, put it down. You don't get the thing you actually want by walking away every time it gets hard. Anybody can start, the whole world can start. You get it by finishing. That's the entire secret. There's nothing behind the curtain except you finish. He was quiet. The dovetails blow out, he said finally, because I rushed the last cut. I know. You've known the whole time. 6 weeks. I was waiting for you to say it out loud. He stood there chewing on it. Then he went out to his truck and hauled the walnut chest back in and set it in the corner and didn't say anything else, and I let him not say anything because sometimes the win is quiet. I went home that night and I could not sleep. Because I'd stood in my own shop and given a 19-year-old the exact speech I needed and could not hear when it was pointed at me. A man who finishes things with his hands, who has never once finished anything with a face, who built a whole identity out of I work alone and I like it, and called it a personality when it was just a garage full of 80%. I'd been treating Nora like a project. That was the part that kept me up. I'd been circling her, sanding the easy edges, feeling for the rough parts, and every single time it got to the joinery, the hard cut, the part where you commit or you ruin the wood, I'd found a reason to set it back in the corner. She said someone from work and I quit her in an afternoon. 19 years ago, a letter went to the wrong house, and I quit her for 2 decades and called it being the kind of guy who's easy to leave. I wasn't easy to leave. I left first, over and over, and never noticed because I did it slow. So I decided to finish. That was my mistake, not the deciding, the way I did it. I came in hot. A man who'd been careful for 19 years, suddenly with a chisel and a deadline. I started showing up more, which was fine. Then I started showing up for Piper specifically, which was not. I bought the kid a real sanding block. Her own, with her name written on the side in my worst handwriting. Fine, then I told her we'd build a whole birdhouse village, a real one, a project that would take all summer, and her face lit up like Christmas. I said it in front of Nora, and I watched Nora's face do something I hadn't seen it do since the porch, close. Then, that Saturday, Piper had a soccer thing. Aaron was supposed to take her and canceled the night before, the way Nora had told me he would. Piper was on the porch in her little shin guards with nowhere to go and a mother on the phone with a lawyer, and I did the thing that felt right and was wrong. I'll take you, I said. And Piper threw her arms around my leg and said, "Can Wes just be my dad instead?" And she meant it light. She meant it the way kids mean everything, but it landed in the yard like a dropped plate. Nora came out fast. She'd heard it through the screen. "Piper, go get your water bottle." The kid went. Nora waited until the door shut. Then she looked at me, and it wasn't anger. It was worse. It was a woman watching the exact thing she'd told me she couldn't survive, happening in her front yard. I told you, she said. Quiet. I told you she was counting on you, and you just handed her a summer of birdhouses and a ride to soccer her father was supposed to give, and now she's asking if you can be her dad in the yard. Nora, I was trying to show up. You were trying to finish, she said it, and I felt the word go through me, because it was mine, because she must have heard some version of it. You decided something changed in you, and you sped up, and you forgot that she isn't a table. She doesn't get reclamped if you rush the joint and it cracks. She's 6. If you go fast and it breaks in her. That's not what I know it's not what you meant. She rubbed her forehead. That's the problem. You never mean it. You just decide and then you move, and everyone around you has to catch what you drop. She looked toward the door. I can't. I'm sorry. I can't let her fall in love with you at the speed you've decided to fall in love with us. Us. She said us. And then she caught it, and it was too late, and it hung there in the yard between two people who both wanted the same thing and were about to ruin it being careful about it. I'll take her to soccer, she said. Alone, I think you should go home, Wes. So I went home. And then it got quiet in the worst possible way. Not a fight. Fights you can come back from. This was politeness. The neighbor kind. She'd wave from the driveway, I'd wave back. Morning. Morning. Piper didn't come to the shop anymore, and I understood that Nora had said something to her, something soft, some version of let's give Wes space, and the juice box stayed in my fridge going flat, and I couldn't make myself throw it out. The birdhouse sat on the shelf where the glue had dried. Finished. The one thing we'd finished together, and it just sat there. The fence-line coffee stopped. She started leaving for the carpool 5 minutes earlier, so we wouldn't overlap. I let her. I stood at my window with dying fern coffee and watched her not be there. The strangest part was the tattoo. I'd catch it on my own arm in the shop light, the compass, the thing that started all of this, and it felt like it belonged to a stranger. Some kid at 19 who thought he'd invented feeling things. Nora had one to match, 30 feet away, and we'd both gone back to being the kind of careful people who wave from driveways, and the two little compasses pointed at nothing. I'd spent 19 years thinking I lost her to a wrong address. Now I was losing her again, at full walking distance, to my own 2 hands rushing the one joint that mattered. Deacon noticed, of course. Kids see everything. You're off, he said one afternoon, standing, not looking at me. You've been off for like a week. You quit something? I looked at him, at the walnut chest in the corner, back where it belonged, the dovetails cut slow and clean now because he'd finally stopped rushing them. Yeah, I said, I think I did. So finish it. He shrugged the way you shrug when you're handing someone their own words back and don't know it. You told me that. Anybody can start. You get it by finishing. He went back to his sanding, and I stood in my quiet shop with the flat juice box and the finished birdhouse and 30 feet of nothing between me and the only person I'd ever wanted to build something with, and I finally understood that the careful thing, the safe thing, the neighbor wave, was just the slowest way in the world to quit. The question wasn't whether I still wanted her. That part I was sure of. The question was whether I had the nerve to walk over there and say the one true thing, out loud in daylight, with no chisel in my hand and no project to hide behind. To stop treating her like a thing I was scared to finish and start treating her like a person I was choosing. I didn't know if I had it in me. But the birdhouse was done, and it was still there in the morning, exactly like I'd promised the kid it would be. The birdhouse sat on my workbench for 2 days. I kept looking at it. A 6-year-old sanded most of it, you could tell. The edges were rounded where a grown man would have left them sharp, and the roof leaned about 2 degrees off true. It was the best thing in the shop. And I was standing there, being a coward about the woman who lived 40 feet away. I want to tell you I planned what I did next. I didn't. There was no speech. I put down the sanding block, wiped my hands on my jeans, and walked across the gravel to her back door before the part of my brain that talks me out of things could get its shoes on. She was at the kitchen table when I knocked. I could see her through the glass, coffee, laptop, a pencil behind her ear. She looked up and her face did that thing it does now, the careful thing, where she decides how much of herself to give the door before she opens it. She opened it anyway. Wheeze. Can I come in for a second? Not a question, really. She heard that. She stepped back and let me past, and I stood in her kitchen with my heart going like a nail gun and no idea where to put my hands. Piper's at her dad's, she said, in case you were about to teach her power tools. I wasn't. Good. We stood there. The coffee maker ticked. Somewhere a truck went by out on the road, and I remember thinking that ordinary sound was going to be in this memory forever, whatever happened next. I fixed your table, I said. She blinked. Months ago. Yeah. I know when I fixed it. I'm saying it because I've been trying to figure out how to start this. And that's the truest thing I know about us right now. I fixed your table and I liked doing it. She pulled out a chair, sat, wrapped both hands around her mug like the room had gotten cold. Okay. I sat down across from her. The table was steady under my elbows, my work. I'd done that. I'm not here to get 19 back, I said. Her eyes came up. That's the part I couldn't say for weeks. I kept thinking this whole thing was about a letter that got lost, and 2 kids who would have made it if the mail had worked. And maybe it was, at the start, but that boy doesn't exist anymore. Neither does that girl. I'm not standing in your kitchen trying to marry a memory. Then, what are you doing? Her voice was low, not cold, just holding very still, the way you hold still when you don't know which way a thing is going to fall. I'm asking to build something new, I said, on purpose. Starting from now, from the guy who has too many commissions in an empty house and the woman who moved in next door with a kid and a wobbly table. I don't want the version of you I lost. I want the one who told me to stop humming when I concentrate because it drives her insane. The corner of her mouth moved, barely. It does drive me insane. I know. I heard it in your voice the first week. She looked down at the mug, turned it a quarter inch. You pulled back, she said. 2 weeks ago, you went all polite neighbor on me, waving over the fence like we sell each other Girl Scout cookies. I did. Why? I could have made it sound noble. I didn't. Because I got scared, I said. I pushed too hard. I stepped on your thing with Piper, and instead of saying, sorry I got out, that's what I do. I've been doing it my whole life with people. I finish everything I make with my hands, and I quit on everything I feel. She was quiet. I told my apprentice last week that you don't get the thing you want by starting over every time it gets hard. You finish, and I was standing there in my own shop, giving a 19-year-old advice I've never once taken. That landed somewhere. I saw it land. Her thumb stopped moving on the mug. So that's what I'm doing, I said. I'm finishing the sentence I started 19 years ago, except I'm not saying it to the girl from back then. I'm saying it to you, the one sitting here. I'm scared, and I'm choosing anyway. The coffee maker ticked. She didn't say anything for a long time. Long enough that I started building the exit in my head. The nod, the thanks for hearing me, the walk back across the gravel. I'm good at that walk. Then she said, I don't want him either. I looked up. The boy, she said, at 19. I spent a lot of years being angry at a ghost, and somewhere in the last 2 months I stopped, because you kept showing up as somebody else. She turned the mug again. You fixed my table without being asked. You taught my daughter to sand a birdhouse, and you let her ruin the edges, and you told her it was better that way. You were patient with her in a way her own father isn't, and you didn't do it to impress me, because half the time you didn't know I was watching. Her voice caught a little on that. She pushed through it. I don't want the boy I lost, Wes. I want the man who did those things. I didn't say anything. I couldn't, honestly. There's a kind of quiet that fills your whole chest and doesn't leave room for words. That's a different thing, she said. You get that, right? Recognizing you isn't the same as going backward. I'm choosing you because I've watched you for 2 months and I like what I saw. Yeah, I managed. I get that. You were scared. So am I. I've got a kid. I got the whole apparatus, the custody calendar, the ex who texts at inconvenient hours. If we do this, you're not signing up for a girl on a beach at 19. You're signing up for a Tuesday where Piper has a fever and I'm exhausted and the dishwasher's broken and I'm not fun. I fixed dishwashers. She laughed. It surprised her, I think. It came out sideways and got away from her, and she put her hand over her mouth the exact way I'd been thinking about since the day she moved in. Of course you do, she said. I reached across the table, slow, gave her every second to pull back. She didn't. My hand covered hers where it sat next to the mug, and neither of us said the thing out loud, because we're both careful people, and careful people don't need the thing said out loud. Her hand turned over under mine, held on. That was it. That was the whole grand gesture. 2 people at a kitchen table with cold coffee, deciding on purpose. There was a compass on my forearm the whole time. 19 years of ink. She looked at it, then at hers, then back at me, and for the first time it didn't feel like a thing that happened to 2 other people. It felt like a coincidence we got to keep. Deacon finished his piece 3 weeks later. A little walnut side table, nothing fancy. Tapered legs, a drawer that stuck at first and then didn't, once he learned to wax the runners instead of forcing them. The first thing that kid ever built all the way to done. He almost quit twice more before the finish line. Once when the drawer wouldn't fit, once when he sanded through the veneer on a corner and thought the whole thing was garbage. Both times he came into the shop with that look, the one that means his backpack's already half packed in his head. Both times I put down what I was doing and said the same thing. You don't start over, you fix the corner. We fixed the corner. It's got a patch you can find if you know where to look, low on the back left where the grain doesn't quite match. He wanted to hide it. I told him to leave it. That's the part that proves you didn't run, I said. The table was for his grandmother. She'd been asking him for a year what he actually did all day in the old furniture man's shop, and he wanted something to put in her hands. So on a Saturday, I loaded it in my truck and drove him across town, and the two of us carried it up her porch steps. She cried. Of course she did. She ran her hand along the top and found the patch on the back corner and asked what happened there, and Deacon opened his mouth to apologize. He fixed a mistake instead of quitting, I said before he could. It's my favorite part. The kid looked at me. Something passed over his face that I recognized, because I'd worn it myself in a kitchen not long before. The look of somebody hearing advice land on their own life for the first time. He kept coming to the shop after that. Still does. He starts things and he finishes them now, mostly, and when he doesn't, he knows the difference, which is the whole game. I told Nora about it that night on her porch. She listened the way she listens all the way, and when I got to the part about the patch, she reached over and put her hand flat on my chest, right over the sternum, and left it there. You know you were talking about yourself, she said. Took me a while. I know, she smiled. I was there for the slow part. Piper figured it out before either of us said anything to her. Kids do. They read the temperature of a house the way Nora reads a bad color palette, instantly and without being asked. One afternoon she was on the shop floor drawing on a piece of scrap plywood with a marker, and she looked up at me and said it plain, the way 6-year-olds say the biggest things. Are you going to be around a lot now? I set down my plane. I think so. Good, back to the plywood. Then, without looking up, Mom smiles the dumb way when you fix stuff. The dumb way. The way she tells me not to smile at boys. I had to turn around and pretend to look for a chisel so she wouldn't see my face. She'd seen the compass 100 times by then. It's on my arm. I roll my sleeves up in the shop. It's not a secret. But that day she put her marker down and walked over and grabbed my forearm with both little hands and studied it like it was a map, which I guess it kind of is. Mom has this one, she said. She does. Why do you have the same one? I thought about how to answer that. There's a true version that's too long for a 6-year-old and a short version that's a lie. And I've been trying lately to stop reaching for the short version of everything. Because a long time ago your mom and I decided to point the same direction, I said. And then we lost the map for a while. And then she moved in next door. Piper considered this with total seriousness. Then she held out her own arm, the inside of her wrist, skin so new it barely had lines in it yet. Can I have one, she said. So I point the same way too. I looked at Nora. She was in the doorway. I hadn't heard her come in. She had that look, the wet-eyed one she hates getting caught in, and she gave me the smallest nod. So I found a washable marker in the drawer, the kind that comes off in the bath, and I sat that kid on my workbench next to a half-sanded birdhouse, and I drew a compass on the inside of her wrist. Not a good one. My hands are better with a chisel than a marker. But she held her arm out to her mom afterward like she'd been knighted. Now we all point the same way, she announced. The tattoo on my arm stopped being a haunting somewhere in that moment. 19 years I'd carried it like a scar from something that failed. And a 6-year-old with a washable marker turned it back into what it was supposed to be the day we got it. A direction. A thing you choose to keep facing. The marker was gone by bath time. Piper cried about it a little. I told her I'd draw it again tomorrow, and I did. And the day after that, and after a week it just became a thing we do some mornings before school, if she asks. Some mornings she doesn't. That's fine too. It's there when she wants it. So that's the story. A quiet one. Nobody ran through an airport. It didn't rain at the exact right moment. There was no letter that arrived 19 years too late to change anything, because we found out the letter didn't matter as much as we thought. The letter belonged to 2 kids who lost each other. We were something else now. 2 adults who decided to get found. I've thought a lot about what I would have missed if I'd stayed a coward, if I'd kept waving over that fence like a good polite neighbor until she gave up, and I convinced myself I never wanted it. There's one real thing I took from all of it. The person you never finished loving can become someone you choose on purpose the second time. Recognizing them across a moving truck, feeling the whole thing rush back, that part is just memory. Memory is easy. Memory happens to you, like weather. Choosing is the work. I didn't get Nora back. You can't get a person back. The girl from 19 is gone, and so is that boy, and thank God, because he ran from everything that scared him. What I got was a woman at a kitchen table who watched me 2 months on purpose, eyes open, that she liked the man I turned into. And I decided the same about her, not because we matched, because we finished the sentence. The compass on my arm points north. It always did. I just spent 19 years pretending I didn't know which way that was. I finished things with my hands. Tables, chairs, a birdhouse a kid ruined the edge of. Took me until 38 to finish something with a person. Turns out it's the same skill. You don't start over when it gets hard. You fix the corner, you leave the patch where you can see it, and you keep pointing the same way, on purpose every single day you get. So let me ask you, what would you have done if the person you never finished loving moved in next door 19 years later? Would you have knocked on that door, or would you have kept waving over the fence? Have you ever recognized someone from your past and had to decide whether recognition was enough, or whether you were brave enough to choose them again on purpose? Tell me your story in the comments. I read them, and the ones about second chances always get me. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.